Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Resume and CV Writing Workshop. I am Dr. Betty May of the Office of Graduate Education and Life. We are glad to have Robert Baricelli and Jessica DeLello from the Career Services Center to share their expertise with us. Before I turn the time over to them, I have just a brief announcement. On July 23rd, from 1 to 3 p.m., we will have another workshop, professional development workshop on grant writing. And so if you haven't signed up for that, please go to the OGO, our office event page to sign up. There will be a link there for you to sign up. And then I would really appreciate it at the end of this workshop, if you would complete the evaluation that we'll be sending you a link and also a QR code where you can get it off the presentation slide, and we would really appreciate it. So feel free to, I guess, ask your question in the chat room. One of the instructors will be checking that from time to time so that they could answer your question. You are muted so that the speakers could concentrate on their messages, on presenting their messages. But feel free, if you need to ask a question, put it in the chat room so that they could get to see it and they will try to answer your question. So, all right, without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Jessica or Robert.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica and I work at Career Services. I will go in to introduce myself in a second, but we would love to hear from you guys. Some of you have already started in the chat to introduce yourself. We'd love to know our audience and who we're talking to. There's quite a bit of you, but we would love to know who we're talking to out there. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what program you're in, what level, what you're studying, we'd love to know so that we might perhaps tailor some of what we're speaking about and how long we talk about some of the topics that we're focusing on today. So we can just kind of browse through and see a little bit about that. So if you wouldn't mind doing that at the beginning so we can kind of take a look in the chat and just look through that, we'd love to see. So thanks so much for doing that. Wonderful. All right, so this is my information. This is my contact information. My name is Jessica DeLello. I'm a career development specialist and I work for the Career Services Center here at WVU. You can certainly email us for an appointment. So keep in mind that anything we talk about today, it's just an overview. We're going to talk about resumes and CVs, the basics of them, some topics to have in them and what to include. But I'm certain just from looking over the chat really quickly that many of you might already have something developed and you might have some specific questions about your specific situation and things that you might be applying to. So feel free, if you have some specific questions that are not answered today, set up an appointment. We are taking virtual appointments in the fall, so you can certainly do that. So you feel free to email us directly, or you can email Career Services, and you can find that information on our website. So I've been working at Career Services for about 4 years now. Before that, I was a school counselor and division coordinator for a public school system. And before that, I got my master's degree here in counseling at WVU. So I'm really happy to be back. And I wanted to point out that all of us at Career Services, the career development specialists, we have pathways that we kind of help with our students. So my pathways, the students that I generally help, are behavioral and social science students. So shout out to my sociology, anthropology, criminology, psychology students out there and watching right now. You guys are my people. But in addition to that, if you're not my people, there are other specialists that can help you. And we did that because we realized that each field is so individualized that it's impossible for us to know everything about every field and every career and every nuance within each resume and things like that in each specialty. So we decided to be more pathway specific. And even still, it's impossible to know everything ins and outs about each field. But because of my background, that's how I landed in those fields. And I also help with education as well. I left that one out. So those are my pathways. And so that's a little bit about me. I'm really happy to be here. And I will be presenting today along with Rob. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rob Baricelli. I've been in career services for about 1.5 years now. Prior to that, I worked in the Forest and Natural Resource Department here at WVU over in the Davis College. Previous to that, I was a director of residence life at a small liberal arts school. So, I've focused a lot of my career on helping students throughout their college career. For my pathway, the students I typically help are the ones that are in the health-related majors or the pre-health related ones that kind of lead off to the medical school, pharmacy school, those type of things. And I'm also the science and math part of STEM. So the biology, biochemical engineering, chemistry, those that I kind of saw scroll through, you would normally be referred to me. So typically our offices are right above the bookstore in the mountain layer. Obviously this coming fall semester and the summer, we are working remotely and will continue to do so. So we're actually probably more accessible to you. So all you need to do is contact our office and we can set up a virtual appointment, either phone or video email, to try to help you in whatever need that you might have, which goes into our next thing of how we can help you.
Okay, so this is a fairly comprehensive list of our services. I won't read them all off to you, but you can skim through that really quickly. Basically, we help students at WVU with everything from when they enter college to when they leave, and beyond that, we also help alumni. So keep that in mind. After you're graduated, we can still help you. You pay a lot in taxes and fees here at WVU, and we are one of the few services that you can still continue to use after you're gone, and we won't charge you any copay or anything like that after you're gone. And a lot of people don't realize that about our services. So I want to put that out there and plant that seed that you can still come back and use our services. And again, we can do remote, no problem. So keep that in mind too. So the biggest things that we probably help with at your level that I want to kind of point out on this list is probably let's see here, Handshake. If you guys haven't heard of that, that is our online job search platform. We do run that. Our office runs that platform. And we will show you a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. We'll mention that and show you how to navigate that a little bit. Our career fairs and events, that is something that our office hosts. Now this fall, they will be virtual. I don't know if you've read any bit about that, but we are having those online and virtual this fall as well. So we're going to try that out and see how that goes. There will be more information on that on Handshake platform as well. So you can see all the companies that will be attending our virtual career fair, how that works. And our office will also be supporting information on how to prepare for that. What does a virtual career fair look like? How do you prepare for that? Things like that as well. So don't worry about that. We'll support you in any way with that. If you are a master's student attending and you might pursue a PhD program, we can help you look over your personal statement, your CVs, things like that before you go to apply for further graduate school, I guess. Practice interviews. So if you have an interview coming up for either graduate school again, or if you are applying for jobs, we do mock interviews as well. And it's really great if you send us in advance what you're applying for, a job description, your resume, all that kind of stuff. We can prepare a little bit stronger and better for that mock interview to help you with that. What else? Let's see here. And the biggest part probably that we do is the resume and the cover letter reviews. Looking through your documents. So we can do that in several ways. We can do that over a Zoom appointment. I think that's the most effective way. If you send it to us, we can look through it and then we can have an appointment where we talk about it and we discuss it. I think that's probably the best way to do it. But you can also email it to us where we can take your document, kind of write some critiques on it and email it back to you as well. And sometimes if we really need to talk about it, we'll say, hey, we need to set up an appointment to talk about this a little bit more in depth. But those are some of the biggest things. And you'll notice there are some other bubbles on there. So career assessments, career counseling, basically anything career related. If you need help with it, we will do our best to help you. And if we can't help you, we will try to connect you with someone who can. So that's really our goal, is to help you. We're here to help students. That's our #1 mission and goal. So that's what we're here for. Okay, so we are curious about your resume. I know a lot of you guys have had this much experience this far. You've probably made a resume, you've probably made a CV. We call this the Amazon generation. So we're used to rating things, right? I'm part of this generation myself. So I'd like you to think about whatever document you've made already, whether it be your resume, your CV. Think about what you have, and I want you to rate yourself. Go ahead. We were hoping to do a poll, but I don't think the poll is going to work out. I'd like you, and if you're comfortable, if you're not, that's okay, you don't have to, but I would like for you in the chat, I would like to see what I'm working with here. Where would you say that your resume or your document stands right now, with 1 being not so good and a 5 being like really, really good? Where would you say you stand right now, do you think? Okay. I'm watching as they come in. This is pretty fun. I feel like it's like a game show or something. All the results are coming in really quickly. It's kind of weird with no voice feedback, but that's okay. Okay, so we're getting a range. So it seems like what I'm seeing is most of you feel like kind of in the middle, maybe to 3 to 4s. Some of you know that it's not so good. So that tells me that there's room for improvement. You might have an okay document, but let's see how we can take it to the next level. I think that's where we need to kind of work on, is what I'm understanding from you guys. So that's a good base, right? Okay, so why? Why is, this might seem like a fairly obvious question, but why is the resume important? Why is the CV important? I know this seems pretty fundamental. What do you guys think? You can chat with me, throw it out there. Yes? Thanks for everybody who's jiving with me. Oh, we've got 2 people that agree on that one. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe are not familiar with Zoom, at the bottom, very bottom toolbar, there's a little button, there's a little icon that says chat. If you click on the chat, that's where I'm talking about, where all this is coming up. So I'm seeing, yes. So exactly, first impression is so that you can make it to the next round. So if you guys are reading through what the crowd is saying, I'm loving what you're saying. And some of you guys might be like, okay, that seems fairly obvious, but all the things you are saying are right. I really like what you guys are saying, that this is your first impression. This is how you might get to the next round. It might determine if you're going to be a candidate at all. Absolutely. Did you guys just want to do the presentation for me? No, I'm teasing. But yeah, I think these are all really, really valid points. And, you know, if you think about it, this document, this paper is really representing yourself, right? This is going to determine if you're even going to have the chance to meet them to talk about it. I hear a lot of people that say, like, if I could just meet them, maybe if I could get the chance to talk to them and show them my skills, or, you know, demonstrate this about myself, I think I could have a chance. But unfortunately, it's this piece of paper that is going to represent yourself, right? So that's what it's all about here. That's why it's so important. So before COVID broke out and all of this, on average for a general business industry corporate position, I think the statistic was for each position posted online, there were about 250 applicants. So, and that's just entry level. That's probably not for a lot of the jobs that you guys might be thinking about, but consider that statistic, that's a lot, right? And if you're considering that this is representing yourself, it's got to be top on par, I really believe. So you want to make sure that it is perfect. Okay, so these seem pretty standard too, but these are things that you want to look through and really make sure. So this was pulled from a NACE survey. This is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, about what are they looking at in the resume. So this is coming from the research, from what employers are saying. These are the top skills. These are the top things that we're looking for in candidates. So the real question is, how do you demonstrate it, right? Like you might have these skills. Of course, any graduate program, gosh, if you're going to make it out of a grad program or a PhD program alive, you're going to have a lot of these skills. That's a given. You're going to have that kind of grit. But beyond that, how do you demonstrate that? How is that shown on your resume? Anybody can say they have communication skills, but what does that really mean? How are you going to show that? And that's where the real importance in the bullets comes into play, right? Rob, you had an example about that you wanted to mention, I think, on the slide, right?
Yeah, so especially since some of you are in the STEM fields, you might have the opportunity right now to potentially supervise undergraduates doing research or supervise other people in the lab if you've been there for a few years, on training them as they kind of onboard like new graduate students this semester. You know, make sure you're quantifying that type of thing on your CV or resume, because that's something that, you know, you don't want to make the assumption of like, well, I worked in the lab, so everybody understands that that's what happens in the lab. You want to be very definitive of the skills that you're going to put on there, especially if they relate to whatever job you're applying for. So, you know, if you have any additional like training, supervision related to the lab, or any publications or teaching, you want to make sure you highlight those as much as possible, and don't make any assumptions. The person reading it is just making their decision based on what you put in front of them.
Good, good tip. So make sure that your experience is also meeting what these skills are too. If you're lacking in an area, really think now about how can I bulk up part of this experience? Because what it boils down to is, in addition to, I love that tip, what Rob's kind of pointing out, it's all about the how, but also consider, you know, if there's an area that your CV or your resume might be lacking, how can you get that experience? So start thinking now, before you're at the point of graduation. Start thinking now, like, it's about the experience, right? So for that job that you want, how do you need to bring yourself up to that point to get to where you need to be too? So with these in mind, these skills. Okay, so this is a question I get quite a bit. So let's just get this out of the way. Which do I need, and what's the difference, and kind of where do we go from here? So let's just talk about this really quickly. The difference between the CV and the resume. Okay, what's a resume? It's actually Latin for brief. So if that kind of helps you out, a lot of you guys know this though. You've all heard that a resume should be 1 page. It needs to be shortened to the point. But the deal is with that, it really needs to be the highlights, and you really want to be specific to the job you're applying to with the relevant education and experience. But generally it's suited and tailored for non-academic jobs, sometimes master's degree programs, but it's mainly for industry, mainly for that audience is usually what it's for. Now, reversely, the curriculum vitae or vita is Latin for course of life. So as you can tell just from the word itself, could be a lot longer, right? So usually the audience, it's tailored for academic, scientific research positions. I don't need to read the slide to you, but you can see the different purpose, generally what it's for. So I work in education with that pathway students too. So even when I have bachelor's level teachers, candidates applying to public school systems, they can have a CV as well. Because of the audience, it's more teaching based too. So consider that just depending on what your need is and what you're going to have on your resume might be better suited in your audience, which one you're going to pick. But yeah, if you're going to be applying for fellowships, grants, doc programs, definitely the CV is more appropriate generally. So usually you're going to have some more advanced training, experience, qualifications on that. Okay, what do they have in common? So they're both going to be tailored to the job description always. You always want to make it tailored, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You want to have the most relevant to what you're applying to at the top, and you always want to consider your audience. So whoever you're applying to, whoever you're writing to, you're always considering in your bullets what you're talking about. You're going to have more bullets for more related experience. You're going to have the sections in order to what's most relevant. You always want to tailor it to who you're applying to. I can't speak to that enough. Both of them, the resume and the CV, are going to be in reverse chronological order. So that means everything on your resume, so that includes all your job experience, all of your experiences, should go from most recent to oldest. So if you have a job that you're still working in, so I don't know, January 2020 to present, that would be more recent, right? And they're all going to have formal, proper jargon and perfect spell check, all of that.
If I could interject real quick, just to kind of give you how you can kind of prioritize. If you're in a, let's say, a PhD program right now, and you've previously been a teaching assistant, but right now you're more in a research role, but the jobs that you're applying for are more teaching related, and you're like, well, how can I highlight those, move those up to the top? You may have two sections. One's called like research experience, the other one's teaching. Even though the research one's more recent, it's not the one that's most relevant to your position. So you would flip those around. But then let's say you're applying to just every position that you're looking for. So for the teaching ones, you would put teaching first. For the research-based ones, you would put research first. So it's not a whole lot of things that you have to shift, but you do have to make sure you're putting your best foot forward.
That's right. Okay. So when choosing which one to use, you don't want to just give everyone a CV because, hey, it gives me longer, more pages. That's not what you want to do, okay? These are the differences right there. And keep in mind that the length is something that's probably one of the biggest differences between the two. That the resume is generally 1 to 2 pages max, whereas the CV can be a little bit longer, and it kind of grows with your career. But keep in mind that you want to give them what they ask for. So for example, if they're asking for a resume, you want to give them a resume. If they're asking, usually they're going to say resume or CV if it's a CV. But if they're asking for a resume, you better give them a resume. Now, one time I was working with a student who was applying to a doctoral program, a PhD program, and it said, please submit a resume, and he had a CV. He had publications, he had presentations, and he had a lot of experience. And he said, this is definitely a CV. Is this appropriate? They're asking for a resume. And I said, I think usually a CV is more appropriate. So what I had him do was I had him contact the program just to make sure. And of course they were fine with it. So when in doubt, always contact someone if they have a contact name, but give them what they ask generally. But if there's something that you're not quite sure about, contact them and find out. And again, if you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end for sure. Okay. Okay, so here's a good tip. We've reviewed many CVs and resumes, and there are a lot of bad advice out on the internet. There's a lot of bad samples even on Microsoft Word templates that are just in the program. I would recommend to you to go ahead and go on our website. It's written right there, careerservices.wvu.edu. We have a lot of information that's very good, credible information about resumes. And keep in mind that it's mainly geared towards resumes, but it can also apply for CVs. The biggest difference is CVs will just be longer and have more sections, okay? So go ahead and use that. We have templates developed on there as well. So Microsoft Word in the program, they don't have a lot of some of their templates are not always so great, and they're not easy to manipulate because they might have embedded tables and things like that. But we made some really easy to manipulate templates as well. So you can go on our website and feel free to download and type right into those. Those are pretty good templates on there. So I wanted to point that out. Also, if you're developing a CV, maybe you're applying to research or postdocs, or I don't know, to be a professor or something in academia yourself, keep in mind a good idea would be to explore faculty CVs as well. So if you're applying to a collegiate position, take a look at that department and see what their CVs look like there. So you might model yours similarly. What do they value? You can find out from their CVs what sections they have and what they've done. And you might model yours similarly or get some insight from that. Now keep in mind, some professors don't have great layouts. Sometimes they have not such great CVs either. So take it with a grain of salt, but you might gather some insight from that. So just a little tip with that. Some general guidelines. Okay, so I'm talking about resumes here. Actually, mainly for both. These are both. 1 page usually for a resume though. But keep in mind for both, you always want to be factual and honest. You don't want to talk them up. You don't want to say more than what you really did. Make it easy to read. You don't want crazy graphics unless you're in graphic design or arts field, okay? That's the only exception. But you want it to be very simple and basic, no colors, crazy fonts. You don't want pictures. That's a big no-no. Keep consistent with your formatting, punctuation throughout, font size, professional email address, of course, and you want to tailor it to each job position, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so sections. I think these are pretty standard and pretty understandable. So for both of them, you're going to have your name, contact information. You want to have your education be at the top, and this is where some resumes on Microsoft Word go wrong. They have them down lower, and that's okay when you have years and years of experience in the field. But if you're just graduating recently, or if you're going to graduate, you want to have it at the top because that's your qualifier, right? So you're going to have your education, then your work experience. You can have relevant experience to really highlight that as a title, and then other experience below, possibly. Extracurricular activities. And keep in mind, you might have some freedom with the titles. You could call it leadership if you had leadership in those extracurricular activities and things like that. And then skills. You could have honors, awards, things like that as well. Now, on the CV, you might have a little bit different sections on there. You might have areas of interest for your research or for what you're trying to go into. Grants that you've done, honors, awards, publications, presentations, teaching experience. That could include GAs and things like that. I mean, GTAs. Scholarly professional memberships, licensures, things like that. And references might go on your CV as well. Not on your resume. Okay, so this is where I was going to talk about tailoring your resume. So this might be new to some of you guys. When I started working at Career Services, this was new to me and it blew my mind. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about ATS systems. It stands for Applicant Tracking Systems. And don't read the slide, just listen to me for a second because it's overwhelming. I want you to really pay attention to this. If there's one takeaway, I hope it might be this. When I first started working here, I learned about ATS systems, and they are basically how large companies tend to filter through resumes. Actually, some small companies might have them as well. It's just an online platform that companies use to filter through resumes. A lot of times these applicant tracking systems might have AI, artificial intelligence, to kind of filter through them as well. Either way, sometimes what they will do is they will filter through resumes before even sending them to a human or before sending them to the next round. They sometimes will do it for a round, or sometimes they will just do it to gather information too. So that's why it's incredibly important that your resume is perfect and that it has the information correctly on your paper when you're submitting online. And so I'm going to give you a couple tips about that, because I didn't know about some of this and I didn't know that this existed, and it blew my mind. So it's just good practice anyway that you're really tailoring to each job. It takes a lot of time. So back to my slide, what you want to do is take a job description and really highlight keywords. I get old school and I literally take a highlighter and I highlight it. But I've seen some students, and I've helped students to do this. You can also take a job description and put it into like a word cloud, like Crowd, I think it's called Tag Crowd. There's a whole bunch of different generators out there. But you can put the job description in a word cloud and it will produce the words that are most used and most important as well. So that's another good tip. So you'll see the most important keywords. And then what you want to do is make sure that if you have that experience, if you've done that, you want to make sure those words are very explicitly in your resume and that you've done them very well. And you make sure that they're very clearly stated on your resume. You want to make sure that you have those match as much as possible. And then another thing for the ATS is you want to save it as a PDF so that when it gets filtered into their system, it doesn't get jumbled or a match kind of all messed up. So to kind of show my point a little bit further, I've got an example of this.
Can I interject real quick before we go to the example?
Always, Rob.
Just something I actually learned today. there's a possibility that over time your PDF files can get corrupted. So if you create like one PDF file and then you open it 100 times every time you send out an application, for example, there's a possibility that that PDF could get corrupted over time. The best way to test to see whether or not it will be a good example to send to an automatic tracking system is either one, create a new PDF every time and save it as PDF for job A type of thing. Or if you just want to say like, oh, I created this last month, let me just make sure it's still working well. An easy test is open up the PDF, cut, copy, and paste into a Word document, and just make sure that all the text doesn't have the formatting, doesn't have to go over to the paste in the Word, but as long as all the letters and everything and there's no extra little spaces or characters that are thrown in there, you're good. It's just if all of a sudden you start to see wacky little wingdings in there, then you know, okay, I have to save a new PDF so that these automatic tracking systems aren't going to be interpreting wrong things from this this file in the future.
Thanks for sharing. So sometimes I was talking about how sometimes you might not even get considered for the next round unless your resume has a high percentage match. So I wanted to show you kind of an example of this. So this is a very basic job description. It's very slimmed down just to use as an example. This is an entry-level psychology, a clinical research assistant position, entry level. So just bear with me. I know this is not just geared towards this group. I use this as an example for an undergrad that I worked with. But as you can see, this is a very slimmed down. I watered it down quite a bit, but you can just read through it really quickly and see that it's just a standard research assistant. They're going to help with human subject interaction testing, data analysis. They're going to help with IRB, grant applications, publication of research results. So basically, they're going to help with the coding of data, recruiting research subjects, preparing reports and manuscripts, things like that. So they're looking for someone with a bachelor's degree, psychology, experience with R, interacting with patients, research subjects. It's pretty standard, right? Okay, so this might be what a job description looks like. Now, I want to show you an example of a person's resume, okay? And these are some of the things that might highlight as a match to match the job description that I showed you previously. So the bachelor's, so the qualification was the Bachelor's of Science in Psychology. That would match. You can see that they have experience with a full research study. And they went on, instead of just saying that they had experience with research, they wrote out that they had the IRB submission, because that's an important detail. They used R, they submitted the study. So even things like submission, because that was in the job description before, they wrote that out as well. Relevant coursework that were applicable to the job. Preparing manuscripts. I don't need to read it to you, but you can kind of see how these things would kind of be relevant. So this would be an okay example, just really quick, flung together to kind of show you the match. But again, the more of a match you have and the higher percentage of a percentage match, the better to go on to the next round. And it gives you a higher chance of actually seeing a human eyes on it. For sure. So it's really important that you match as high as possible. That was really eye-opening to me, and I hope that maybe one person in this presentation learned something new from it. Okay, let's go on to the next. Okay, so when we're reviewing people's resumes and CVs generally, we'll find some formatting issues. We'll usually find some grammar here and there, little things, but a lot of the time we spend our bulk of the time with the bullets and talking about the experience piece. So I want to take a minute to just address that. So really with the bullets, we want to talk about how they're relevant and how you can make them a little bit stronger. So especially when you're thinking about something that might not be as related, or how does your experience relate to something that maybe might be a little bit different, you really want to think about your bullets and write about them. Instead of thinking about what task-oriented thing you did, think about the skill that you had. So talk about the transferable skill. Write about it as kind of like the accomplishment and the skill. And if you can think about that and write about it in that context, it'll be much stronger instead of just writing the task. I did this, I did this, I did this. With that, if you can use some tips, so use numbers to show your scope. Numbers look great on a resume. So instead of just saying, like, I worked with some kids at a summer camp, I worked with over 250 students at a week-long day camp, you know, kind of showing some more details, pull it out a little bit more. Be specific. So how did you do that? I'm always looking at people's bullets, and if it's too vague, I always am asking the question, how? Did they answer the question, how? So when you're looking at your resume and you're reviewing your 3.5 that you've rated yourself, go back through your bullets, and before submitting it to Career Services or having an appointment with us or submitting it to, even more so, to a job, think, did I answer how I did that, or be specific enough with it? And accomplishments. This is not the time to be humble. You definitely want to talk about, what did that result in? How did I benefit the company, the research, the group I was with? What was my individual output? Because even as a student, even as an entry-level person, you are giving some sort of purpose, and you're giving something back to that group. You just have to think about it and word it really nicely and eloquently. So what was your output? What did you accomplish with that? So here's an example of one that was really too short and too to the point. A lot of times people think resume, short to the point. But you don't want to be too short. You really want to sell yourself. So manage social media accounts is not a good bullet at all. But this person then kind of combined all of these tips, created and managed Twitter and Instagram accounts, which resulted in a 5% increase in revenue over 3 months. So that's much, much stronger to show that output in the gain. So yeah, that's a really good thing to do. Rob had a really good formula. Rob, did you want to share the formula for writing bullets? I'm putting you on the spot. I have it if you don't want to.
I just had to unmute.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times, especially students that are just kind of starting off and doing the first one, a lot of times we'll just write down like the tasks that they did, as we already kind of said here. What you want to think is, what are the things you use to accomplish that task? What skills do you use to accomplish? So an easy formula would be, you know, I performed X to do Y, resulting in Z, because that would accomplish a lot of those things of what were your accomplishments and results related to whatever it is you're doing. And if you don't really have that Y and Z part, then you know that that's probably not a good bullet to put on your document, and that you really want to, you know, demonstrate your best and strong points on there. So if you were, let's say, a teaching assistant in a course, or you were doing tutoring relating to that, you could say something like, you know, I tutored 10 students in chemistry 115 for the fall semester, and all the students ended up getting a B or better in the class, or improving their grade, 1 letter grade from the start to finish of tutoring, so that you can kind of show some type of accomplishment, not just, you know, I tutored a bunch of students, because they can't tell how effective you were related to that.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. I like that formula. I think it's pretty handy. All right, so that's with bullets. And certainly each one is individual, and everybody's situation is individual too with their resume. So it's hard to speak as a whole, but those are just some tips to kind of help you be a little bit stronger with those. Okay, so I saw a question in the chat about references. Do they go on the resume or not? Do you mention their name? So you always want to ask, obviously, before you put their name on. You want to make sure that they know what you're applying to, and keep them updated about your search, and make sure that it's okay with them that they're one of your references. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. So for the resume, if you're submitting a 1 or 2 page resume, do not put the references on your resume. And here's why. That's important real estate. You only have a page to kind of talk about your experiences and all the things you've done. Don't waste it by putting your references on there. The references can be a separate document. You can upload it in the additional document section when you're applying, or you can bring it with you to your interviews and hand it to them there at that point. So don't waste your real estate on the resume is my recommendation for you. It's not worth it. Now for the CV, It's pretty standard and it's pretty common. You see that a lot, to see your references on there, and that's okay, especially if they ask for it. Like I've seen some doctoral programs request that sometimes. They would like to see the references as a part of the CV. I've even seen it so explicit to say that. So it's okay to have it on your CV. And I do see that sometimes as well. And usually with the references, you have their name, their position. We have some examples, I believe, on our website, but their name, their position, their contact information, email, phone, things like that. Some information is on there on that slide right there.
The only thing I would add to that is if you have a one-page resume, you do not need to put at the bottom references available upon request. Again, that's just taking up real estate that you could be putting your skills on that piece of paper. So on CV, it's fine, but you don't need to mention it at all on the resume. They know they can ask for your references. That's
implied. That's right.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing I want to touch on real quick is, the resume and CVs are really living documents. And it's something that, once you have your kind of draft out there, you want to make sure that you might think, like, I have a pretty good feel for where it's at right now. Have someone else take a look at it, whether it's a friend of yours, a peer, your faculty advisor, one of us, somebody, to have another set of eyes on it, to maybe realize, like, oh, you missed something here, or there's this misspelling. You've read enough of your own documents to realize you've read it so many times that you miss the errors, and somebody else, it's more glaring to somebody else. So once you get that feedback from somebody, revise it again based on what they say, and then have a professional review it. So again, either somebody from our office, someone in the field that you're going to go into. So if you're going to go into academia or research, have one of your faculty advisors or supervisors review it. That makes sense. And then take their advice and revise it further. If you're shifting gears and going out more into the industrial world, if you have a mentor, or maybe you can reach out to an alumni on WVU Connect, which is WVU's alumni kind of social platform, you may be able to find an alumni who's in your field somewhere out there, and they can, a lot of times in their profile, it will say willing to help students. And one of the things they have on there is like, review resumes or mentor students or that type of thing. So they can give you feedback on what they would expect in their industry. Next up is, Jessica already mentioned it earlier, Handshake is our on-campus job platform, and that is how employers recruit students at WVU. And they recruit for all majors across the university, and it's not just employers from this region. There will be people that are national level companies that will post a job on Handshake, and then they will push it out or check what schools they want to post that job to. So that's a good starting point to start on your job search if you're like leaving your degree programs. Or if you're looking for a summer internship, that might be another place to start off. But don't think that that's the only place you should go. On our website, we also have Career Shift, which is another job platform, which kind of conglomerates everything from the web, much like ZipRecruiter and Monster and Indeed and all those type of things. It has a little bit more rich search functions on there. So that might be another kind of second step. And then the third part I would say is make sure you look at your professional organizations, especially if you're wanting to stay within the academic and research-based area, is most of your professional organizations or industry organizations will have job boards related to it. So sometimes it's behind a paywall and only members can get access to that. So that's one reason why it's good to be a member of your professional organization. Sometimes it's free to anybody and you can search whether you're a paid member or not. Most of the time it's good to start as a student because there's normally a lower student rate to be a member of the professional organization, which if you wait to join until after you graduate, you may, it may cost you more. So now's a good time to start making those connections. And then there's a number of other places that we can help you with the job search, but we would do that more and a one appointment. But these are at least the 3 kind of starting spots that you can go. Also related to Handshake, Jessica mentioned that our virtual career fairs in the fall will be all within Handshake. And unlike other platforms for virtual career fairs, this will be kind of a registration-based career fair. So if you want to go to an information session for a company or employer, you can register for that ahead of time. If you want to meet with a representative of that company, you can register to meet in a 10-minute conversation with them, and you'll know that all before the day of the career fair. It is not one of those things where you just log in and then browse around and see who's available, or you quote unquote queue up and wait in line to talk to a representative of a company. You'll be able to do all that days or weeks in advance. Okay, so right now there's a small number of people that are registered for the career fairs, but just realize that this is very early on in the process. Most employers typically register about 3 to 4 weeks prior to an event. So keep checking back and see who the employers are. All right, next up, we just want to kind of recheck after you've learned some of the things from us today. Now, where do you feel you are with your resume and CV? So again, put in the chat room how you kind of feel about your document at this point. Your opinion might have gone up or it may have gone down. So please type that in there now. Seems like a little bit of less presentation at the end of the night. Everybody's probably wanting to go eat dinner or something. So feel free to keep writing your responses in there. The next slide is going to be related to, we'd like you to complete an evaluation of the workshop and give us some feedback. You can either use the QR code that's visible on the documents, or we will be putting the link in the chat right there. So you can click on the link that's currently in the chat if you would like to go to that now. And
yes, I just put the link in there. And we are also open for any questions that you might have too. I think we answered, yeah, you can leave that up there, but we'll open the floor for any questions that you might have if you want to type any into the chat. We did answer some as we went, but we do have a couple minutes to kind of address any questions that you might have about CVs or resumes. We're happy to do so.
Jessica, I would say that if they want to unmute themselves and ask the questions, they may do that too. And I will say it again, I would really appreciate it if you would complete the evaluation. It shouldn't take you more than a couple of minutes to complete it. In there, you have the opportunity to tell us what you would like to see in future workshops. That would really help us plan for the fall and the future semesters to come.
Okay, so let me see here. We're getting a lot of questions coming in. Rob, would you like to take that first one about the solid line between sections?
Sure.
We got the question, is there a preferred way to break up sections of a CV? For example, do you want a solid line, or is there any way that's preferred or not?
So in general, and I believe there was someone earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't grab the name, that kind of asked the question, should the resume format be as simple as possible? In general, I would say yes. A solid line is, think of it this way. A lot of times when students like to, put color in their name or their section headers or that type of thing, that is not the thing that's going to get you an interview. People are going to be like, oh, you use red as your section header. I really like you more than I did 2 seconds ago. For automatic tracking system purposes, they could care, having a line there to break up your sections doesn't matter. It doesn't confuse them at all. The thing that does confuse the automatic tracking systems are using tables in your documents. or if you have multiple columns. So that's why it's simpler. Like if you look at the templates on our website, you're probably going to be like, wow, those are really boring looking and they're just black and white. Yes, they're intentionally that way so that the automatic tracking systems will be able to interpret the data and feed it into their system as easy as possible. But lines between sections, don't confuse them at all. Just columns and tables are not a big thing. So try to avoid that part.
Perfect. Okay, let's go with some other ones here. What time frame should we allow before submitting a resume to contact you for help? So Kristen, I think I'm not quite clear on your question. So what time frame should we allow?
Can I drop it?
Yeah, go.
So my guess is if you're like, I want to apply for a job that's due next Friday, when should you give it to us?
Oh, gotcha.
I think that's what she's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
The sooner the better, because hopefully you don't have a lot of things that need changed. And hopefully there isn't a large amount of work that you have to put in there. But the more time that you can, there wasn't just a one review process that I had on that one slide. It was, do it, have somebody review it, revise it, have somebody else review it and revise it. I would give yourself at least 2 to 3 weeks to kind of go through that process, because you might give it to a faculty member. It may take them a couple days or a week to get it back to you. For us, we typically try to turn them around within 2 business days, depending on when it comes into our office. So, but we may have a lot of things for you to change. So that may put more time on you to do it. So the sooner the better would be best. And like Jessica said earlier, if you're applying for a certain type of position or graduate position, send that along with it. And then that will help us to see how well you've tailored it to that position.
That definitely helps. I can't say that enough, because sometimes I will email the student back, hey, what are you applying for? And then it'll take another 5 hours to write back. We kind of go back and forth a little bit before I even have the time to write back. And this fall is going to really, we don't know what it will look like with everything being online and things. So we might be even more congested. We don't know how our appointments will look and things like that. So I would say, you might even expect a little bit more. Our traditional 2-day response rate might be a little bit longer. So just to be safe, I would definitely just plan on, giving some time. So definitely things you can do in advance to make it better, to give us the job description right off the bat, what you're applying to, and as much information as possible would definitely help make it go quicker. But we try our very hardest to get back to you as soon as possible. But it's also, people could be out. You never know. So definitely the more the better. Our next question said, are there any limits to alumni career help? A friend might have graduated in 2017. Can he still get help too? Yes. The answer is yes. I've helped people who've graduated. I've helped, people who are mid-career changers. I've helped people who've graduated in the 90s. I've helped all sorts of people. So definitely they can still come back and get help. Another question.
And we are one of the few services on campus that does continue after you graduate.
Yes. Yeah. You can't still use the rec center or, a lot of the other services. So we're happy to help your friend. If you graduate from WVU, of course. WVU doesn't allow you to change your email to something less student-like. Advice on dealing with that. Do we use another email address altogether? Yeah, so you can use your mixed email address if you'd like, but yeah, I would recommend, if that's something that you want to grow out of, or if you don't prefer the mixed email, since you can't change it, you can definitely develop your own professional sounding email. I believe that when I had graduated, I made my own because I wanted my own. I wasn't sure if mixed was going to expire on me when I graduated. I found out that you can keep it. But I think I developed, mine was like jessicaldelello@gmail.com or something like that. So, you can definitely create your own professional sounding email as a possibility.
I'll just want to add 2 things to that. If you have a mail address because you're teaching assistant or research assistant and you've gotten that as part of your position, realize that may turn off. The mixed one is something that will definitely continue postgraduate, but if you have one of those kind of recent weird ones where it'll be like initial and then 4 numbers, and you're like, yeah, I don't really want to use that, I would agree with Jessica, get a personal one. And I would even kind of go a step further and say, um, you may have a personal one that has like your name on it, like mine has my initial and then my last name. You may want to create one that's just for your job search, so that the only stuff that's going into that account is your job search one. So maybe you make it a little bit different, like first name dot last name or something like that. And then that's the only thing going in there. And you don't have to worry about, you know, that's also the one that you use to log into Amazon or other accounts, and
But if
spam
you
is
do
getting in
that,
there.
let
Yeah,
me interject on that. If you do that, you got to keep up with that one, because
right.
I've applied to things, and then, even up to 6 months to a year later, I've had people reach out from that when I already had a job, and you don't want to burn those networks or possibilities too. So if you do create something just for job applications, make sure you keep up with it well after, even if you have a job, because you want to maintain that. You never know who could be an open door down the road. So yeah, that's a great suggestion though.
And it should be related to your name. It should not be, WVU fan 2020 or, biomedical engineer 3000 or anything like that. It should be something that is unique to you name wise. And then kind of going with Jessica's thing, it should be something that you can check on your phone and that you're monitoring pretty regularly. So if you do get something that pops up, especially if it's the one that you're using on LinkedIn, there are some recruiters that will both do cold calls in LinkedIn and Handshake, where if they see your resume, they might say, we want to reach out to you because we might have a really good position for you. Um, you can still say like, no, I'm not currently interested, or I'm not looking right now, down the road, but you might want to, at least have that professional response. So that's a door that may open a couple years down the road. And then the other thing related to that is related to emails. The other thing that is on your resume is your phone number. If I call the phone number that you put on your resume, am I going to get a message with your voice and your name? So if you call my voicemail, you should hear, hi, this is Rob Baricelli. I'm not available right now. Please leave me a message. That does a couple things. One, it tells the whoever's calling me, the employer, how to pronounce my name. It also lets them know that they've reached the correct number and not, hello, you've reached number here. So it just kind of adds a level of professionalism. So that might be something you think about. And then also related to voicemails is make sure you know how to check your voicemail and delete them. As someone who's been a recruiter, it is extremely annoying when I want to call a student and say, you've won a scholarship, and I try to call them and I get a voicemail that says their voicemail is full, and then it hangs up on me and I can't leave them a message. So that employer would probably not call you back. So please make sure you monitor and clear out your voicemail during your job search process.
All right, I think we've got time for just a couple more. I see one more in this chat. It says, can a QR code be put on the CV that links to a personal website? The personal website might have publications, other information, etc. I've definitely seen actual websites written out, or portfolios written out on there. I can't say I've ever seen a QR code on there. Rob, what do you think?
So I would say no to the QR code for a couple of reasons. One, technically it's just a picture. And, as we've kind of said with the automatic tracking systems, they don't do well with non-text things. So putting a picture on there is just something for them to, tag an error on your resume as it interprets it. So I would not recommend the QR code. I would just put the link to wherever you want them to go. And you might say like, oh, that website, let's say you have a long LinkedIn profile website, go to bit.ly or some other URL shortening website and get it down to something shorter that has your name in it. That can be easy to type. And that would be a better space saver than a QR code up there.
Awesome. Yeah, and in LinkedIn, if you choose, you can also share your LinkedIn on your documents as well. That's another advice. So if you're feeling like you can't fit everything that you want to on your couple pages right there. Remember that LinkedIn is a website where you can share a lot of things, and you can share different media forms as well. So it might be a good idea to include your LinkedIn site on there as well. And keep in mind that your LinkedIn can go on there, and that you can also edit your LinkedIn name so it's not so long and a lot of numbers as well. You just have to go into the profile and edit the settings. And I think I changed mine to like Jessica DeLello or Jess DeLello, something like that. So that's easy to do as well. All right. So
can I add one tangent to that as well?
yeah.
Since I mentioned like automatic tracking systems don't do well with pictures, the other things that they don't do well with is like pictures of yourself. Most automatic tracking systems try to make you anonymous during the review process to whoever's evaluating you. So it will typically hide your contact and name information. So the evaluator really just at the company, typically, if it's in a private industry, they will just see your education and your qualifications and everything, and they won't see who you are or anything like that, and that's how they will grade you. Obviously, if you're applying to a PhD program or a very specific research position, and they're only going to have like 5 or 6 candidates who really meet those qualifications, they're not going to make that anonymous. But just because I don't know the entire population that we're talking to, in the US, we do not have pictures on our resumes. I know that's a different standard than some places in Europe and elsewhere. And the reason for that is we have equal opportunity laws here, and most automatic tracking system, if there's a picture in the file, whether it's your picture or a QR code, most companies have that set up to automatically reject you because they don't want to in any way have any information that may bias their results. So they'll just turn you off and say, we're not going to look at it because we don't want a potential equal opportunity claim down the road because of potential bias related to that. So I would put no pictures of any kind, whether it's a QR code or your headshots, on it. You can put that on your LinkedIn profile if you feel comfortable, but that's not something to put on your CV or resume or reference or cover letter.
All right. Well, I think that's wrapped up most of the other questions. I want you all to know that please set up an appointment. We would love to spend some time with you. Usually a CV appointment would take a good hour, but if you have a standard resume, if you have a deep resume, if you're a PhD student or a master's student, we would probably like to spend an hour with you as well, but sometimes they're 30 minutes to an hour. But we'd love to meet with you. So feel free to set up an appointment if you have any other additional questions. And don't forget to fill out the evaluation too to help out both of our offices to help out. But we're so happy to have you today, and we'd love to hear about your individual situations and how we can support you in your further academic careers and your actual career in the future too. So know that we're here to support you so much, and we hope that you're all staying safe and healthy out there. And we're looking forward to seeing you in the fall, even if it's online.
Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. Have a good evening. And thank you, Jessica and Rob, once again, for your time.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Everyone stay healthy and well. Goodbye. See you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.